Point Cook. Established in 1913, the military airfield and base of Point Cook in Melbourne, Australia, is now notorious for terrifying apparitions and presences, with some staff known to refuse to enter certain buildings day or night. A typical scenario occurred when, in late 1991, Roy Lutenmeyer and Jock Smith were working at a bench in the airfield's museum when suddenly the temperature fell dramatically. They both looked up and saw a man staring at them. He was wearing a dark blue uniform and had a distinctly triangular face and large ears. Although he was standing only 4 meters away from the workers and his figure was clearly visible, his face was strangely blurry. The two men stood gaping at the officer in total silence before he strolled casually across the room, then walked straight through a steel filing cabinet before disappearing. Shocked, the two men ran from the workshop and told the commanding officer they bumped into what they had seen. Squadron leader John Matthews informed them that he had heard many similar reports of the resident phantom. After a long search through old photographs of past Point Cook personnel, the apparition was able to be identified. Despite his strange lack of facial features, they were in no doubt that he was Squadron Leader Stanley Goebel, from the distinct shape of his head and ears. A simple look at his bio confirms that the passionate airman would have found it hard to let go of his vocation. Poltergeist activities, such as missing reference books and items being moved overnight in the RAF Museum in Point Cook, also included a heater behind a false display wall mysteriously turning on one night. The staff had to literally tear down the wall to turn off the heater. Paranormal researcher John Welfare decided to scrub his plan for a sleepover there after hearing about some of the terrifying phenomena. One nocturnal ghost rattles cups, opens doors, and sets the floors creaking with his footsteps. In May 1989, leading aircraftman Nick Dennis was sleeping in the haunted fires section when awoken at around 2 a.m. by tapping on the window and the sound of someone talking. The voice was asking, "Can you remember back to 1980? And when Dennis rolled over, said, "I saw your leg move." The same year, another Air Force fireman sleeping in the firehouse was terrified to feel unseen hands pressing down on his legs and shoulders. Although the man was powerfully built, he found himself unable to rise from his bed. The chilling experience happened to the same man on 3 further occasions, after which he refused to work the night shift again. In 1985, a Point Cook guard performing night patrol with his dog challenged a man who looked a little out of place, wearing what seemed to be a World War I pilot's uniform. The intruder ignored the guard's command and the dog's unusually ferocious barking, simply walking past briskly and then disappearing. RAF Lakenheath. Most people working night shift at RAF Lakenheath in Suffolk, England, have experienced an array of strange occurrences in this spectre-studded location. According to Darren Mann from the Paranormal Database, there are several different ghosts haunting the base. One is thought to be a phantom RAF pilot who's been a continuous presence there since 1951 and has been encountered by the crews working at Pass 46, a jet hangar. According to those witnesses, the ghost of the pilot will occasionally appear at night and ask whoever is there for a cigarette or a light. When the person reaches out to fulfill the request, the apparition will have disappeared. The spectre is believed to be that of a pilot who accidentally ejected himself up into the ceiling of the hangar 15 to 20 years prior. Paranormal investigators wondered if base officials were protecting the dignity of their supernatural tenant or just weren't sure when they were unable to confirm whether a pilot had perished in that way at Pass 46. Another known presence is the spirit of a Royal Australian Air Force pilot who has been haunting the site since 1945. On moonlit nights, his transparent image, that of a man in an Australian pilot's uniform, is often seen walking across the airfield. The figure is thought to be a manifestation of a pilot who died when his bomber crashed in 1945. Another ghost of a World War II airman is known by many as Lakenheath Charlie. He has been spotted roaming the airfield with a glowing red lantern attempting to wave off incoming pilots. This may tally with the base's use during the war as a decoy airfield. Some have seen the ethereal airman, who is believed to have been an RAF pilot, standing on a perimeter road and smoking. Many encounters with Lakenheath Charlie have also occurred near Hangar 46. Lakenheath currently hosts United States Air Force units and military personnel. In 2005, the Stars and Stripes news outlet reported 2 separate accounts of the same airman. A website called Moonfruit logged an account of the experience of Jackie Travis, a former RAF Lakenheath airman. He had been assigned to a dormitory where many security police for the base were staying, working shifts 24 hours a day, so that there were groups of people around 24/7. Late one night, a group got onto the subject of ghosts and strange occurrences, and one of the men gave this account of Lakenheath Charlie. As the base was on British soil, the American guests respected the right of locals to use their traditional footpaths, which had been used over centuries by the local Brits to get around the countryside. Whenever a British citizen needed to use the footpath, the protocol was for them to be announced by the gate guard and followed by security past the flight line, before exiting the base on the other side. One night, Charlie had entered the base on his bicycle, but the gate guard was distracted and forgot to radio to the patrol that someone was on the footpath. Charlie was hit and killed by a landing plane. The man telling the story then told of a night when he was a new airman on duty with a patrol on the flight line. The tower radioed them that someone was riding a bike on the flight line without authorization. The team patrolled the area and reported back that they had seen nothing. Having night vision goggles, the tower then replied that the cyclist was definitely still there and nearing their vehicle. Of the 4 men in the Humvee, one got out with his radio to confirm the sighting, but still seeing nothing, again reported this to the tower. The tower radioed back, "He's less than 50 feet in front of you." Now agitated and even scared, the airman insisted that there was no one in front of him. Chillingly, the tower responded, "He just rode past you and is headed for the back gate." Petrified, the airman jumped back in the Humvee, where the others had heard the transmission on their radio, and all swore they saw nothing. Lakenheath Charlie is also rumoured to turn hangar lights off and on and unlock doors that had been secured by more than one person. The men listening to this story all had goosebumps and watery eyes, although one expressed scepticism. He spoke up, but before he could finish his sentence, the curtains billowed upwards and a loud crashing noise was heard from the kitchen just a few feet behind the group. As the windows were all closed, no breeze could be blamed, and the crashing noise came from a broiler pan that the storyteller had used earlier and placed in the sink to soak. The large pan was now on the floor. Another strangely inexplicable ghost has also been witnessed at Lakenheath. About 5 years ago, 2 airmen who were observing the perimeter fence surveillance camera reported seeing a woman in white running along the fence inside the base. Security forces, including a dog team, were ordered out to find the intruder, but found nothing accounting for the eerie apparition. Fortuna Villa. Fortuna House in Bendigo, Australia, is an 1860s mansion which was converted into a military headquarters in 1942. Used until 2008 for the Army Survey Regiment and defence mapping, many night duty officers were refusing to sleep in the main building, alongside its reputed 11 ghosts. While the Department of Defence was based there, nightly patrol officers were required to write down nocturnal disturbances in a notepad known as the Ghost Book. The chilling phantoms, who all seemed to date back pre-war, included the house's founder George Lancel, whose bearded figure regularly stalks the corridors and balconies. There is also a disembodied female voice, which is thought to be that of his first wife Bedelia, who died in mysterious circumstances. Her voice, which has had tough army men shaking in their boots, is accompanied by the fragrance of roses, but disconcertingly, she's also heard to scream when she catches George's second wife, Edith. Other ethereal characters include a teenage girl who asks people to leave, a boy in a sailor suit, and a man whose head and torso pass through the banister of the main staircase. One night guard would only sleep in the main building if he had his Doberman dog with him. Although every night he did so, his dog was seen to go berserk in a particular corner. In February 1973, one captain reported a particularly unnerving and seemingly interactive ghost. While on picket duty just before 5 a.m, he was crossing a barrack block to some stairs when he noticed an object standing by the kitchen doors. An apparition in the form of a shroud hovered by the door, moving slowly from side to side. He recalled that the form was about 1.8 metres tall and transparent. He could see the brickwork through it. He watched it rotate slowly from left to right and then suddenly stop. Eerily, he got the impression that it had sensed his presence. The whole strange sighting had lasted for about 2 minutes. In another report from 1982, a sergeant had just carried out a full check of all doors and windows in the main building, including the telex room, and was fetching the key so as to check incoming telex messages. As he picked up the key, he heard a woman's voice say softly, "What are you doing here?" Already extremely frightened, he was terrified on reaching the telex room some 6 metres away when the door he had just confirmed as locked slowly opened before him. In another incident, reported by a colonel in 1965, he had heard footsteps approaching double doors connecting the billiard room with the old ballroom, which then swung fully open. It was 3 a.m. and he was alone in the locked building, so there was no explanation for the creepy phenomenon. As a result of multiple reports over decades at Fortuna Villa, in 1987 the Army declared that it no longer required any personnel to sleep overnight there. Predictably, this decision did trigger a small amount of public condemnation around soldiers being scared of ghosts, but remained in place. Amberley Air Force Base. Amberley Air Force Base in Brisbane has become so notorious for paranormal phenomena that ghost tours now run there regularly. Tour leader Jack Sim became aware that, over the decades, former and current staff were reporting frightening and unexplained occurrences taking place at night. In 1978, a 9-squadron helicopter crashed in South Australia, resulting in the loss of the commander and crew. 2 days later, apparitions of the dead men were seen by a pilot at Amberley. There are also several accounts about the base which date back to before the Second World War. One story from around that time involves a plane that was seen to be coming in for a landing, but then took off again before touching down. It turned out that that particular plane had crashed some hours away from the base. The time of the crash placed the plane a long distance away from Amberley at the very same time that the ghost plane was seen trying to land. According to Sim, people who live around the base have also reported that it is a UFO hotspot. In the 1970s, people often reported seeing flying saucers hovering near the base.